But you know what? Something is really making me make those sounds of satisfaction. And it's because the future of agriculture lies in biotechnology. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of discussion going on. What exactly can biotechnology do to help solve the problems of world hunger? Well, before we can answer that question, we need to understand what exactly is biotechnology? What are its true benefits? And lastly, will the world let us resolve those problems? So, December 2007, USDA came out with a report, a really good report, on what exactly is biotechnology. And they define biotechnology simply as a modification of a crop or an animal to achieve a specific purpose, our purpose in agriculture, to make a product more efficient and to be able to make a crop better in quality. And we do that through a number of ways, but the way I really want to look at is genetic engineering, through the modification of cells to be able to withstand different environments, different pests, and different weeds. So, what are the benefits of biotechnology? The first benefit I want to talk about is that it's going to be able to increase crop quality and crop yield by huge margins. How? Well, one of the first examples that I like to bring up is Roundup corn or Roundup soybeans. The idea that we can be able to plant these types of crops and they will, once we spray down herbicides on those crops, they will not be affected, but the weeds will be able to be destroyed, allowing us to be able to have a much larger yield and a better crop quality. By being able to also adapt these crops to be able to survive in different environments. We have this discussion of whoever can make a crop that can grow in a drought-stricken area like Africa will become the richest man in the world. That is what biotechnology is trying to achieve. They are trying to develop a crop that can grow in drought-resistant areas. That is the future of biotechnology. Biotechnology is also looking at making every single bite of food count by making crops even more nutritious and making animals even more nutritious by genetically modifying their genes. So, there are a lot of benefits to biotechnology. So is the world listening? Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, places such as China, Japan, and the European Union want nothing to do with biotechnology. They sit there and they claim over and over again that there are major health issues concerning with it, because one person died of an allergic reaction in France. And now they claim that genetically modified foods should be illegal and banned in their countries. The greatest problem is, ladies and gentlemen, is the United States Department of Agriculture, the Food and Drug Administration program here in the United States, and the Environmental Protection Agency here in the United States have all conducted research and have found nothing of health concerns when it comes to biotech crops. So what's the big deal? Ladies and gentlemen, I find it as the biggest irony of all. We have China creating toys out of lead and selling it to our babies to put in their mouths. And yet they come to us and say, you cannot sell us biotech crops. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an irony. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, through the genetic modification of crops, we can be able to have substantial benefits, to be able to plant crops in places that they have never been planted before. We have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to feed and resolve world hunger if the world will let us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not a question in the world of how much food can you afford. It is a question, ladies and gentlemen, of how much food you need to get your children to bed without them feeling hunger. That is what biotechnology is out to achieve, and I believe that it is time that we join the bandwagon and the rest of the world. Thank you.
We've talked a lot about some of the positives. What are some potential disadvantages that maybe have stimulated some of the rest of the world to not have as positive a view as you do about it?
Well, the world, two French scientists conducted a research back in 2001, and they claimed that there was a huge problem with it, that certain people were having an allergic reaction because supposedly there was pesticide residue and herbicide residue still on the crops whenever they were sent to the marketplace. However, the problem there is not necessarily that it's genetic engineering that is the problem. It is the problem of management to be able to get rid of that pesticide residue. Maybe through using management practices to reduce pesticide and herbicide use. Maybe that issue could be resolved. But they have conducted research through the USDA, through the FDA, and through the EPA, and they have found nothing of a significant health risk for biotechnology.
You make an excellent point of the strength of biotechnology from a producer standpoint, but from the consumer standpoint, that is perhaps perception is reality in their mind, and there are concerns with genetically engineered crops. What would you tell them to alleviate their fears, to make them more accepting of what biotechnology can provide for them?
Well, biotechnology can provide just two major things. First, it's a more efficient crop, and it's a cheaper crop. While we sit here and we watch the cost of food increase by exponential rates, by being able to have a greater crop quality and greater crop yield, we'll be able to reduce the price to the consumer, which is a major benefit. Now, there's been a lot of talk about labeling genetic foods, such as saying, okay, we're going to warn the consumer. You may suffer from an allergic reaction. Maybe there will be pesticide and herbicide use. And that's where the issue of labeling the genetic engineered products and selling it to the consumer by warning them, hey, this is a genetically engineered crop. We are not liable for any problems that should come. And then it's the consumer's choice from there to whether or not to consume that genetically engineered product.
Just follow up to that. If you're putting a warning label on the product, does that not raise a red flag that there's something perhaps wrong with the product?
That's why, personally, I'm against labeling genetic engineered crops because there is no health promise to it. But you have consumer advocates, such as you have many consumer advocates who come out and say, hey, we got to protect the consumer, and you have tons of label warnings on these little toys that you buy for your 3-year-old, and they say, hey, warning for choking. Well, you're probably not going to buy the toy because you're afraid your child's going to choke. It's the same issue here. There's going to be a warning label, not necessarily a warning label, but a caution saying, hey, you know, we're not liable if something should happen to you if you consume this genetic engineered crop. That is for your responsibility, and we're giving you that choice, just like they did the choice the other consumers would purchase other products with those same warning signs on them.
Small farmers are seeing gains in organic farming. How do you feel those small farmers can make the biotechnology still has the same advantage?
I think the biggest issue with organic farming, my dad, he wanted to get an organic farming license and everything, and he did a lot of research on organic farming. He's told me a little bit about it. And my biggest issue with organic farming is it's not being able to hit on the key issues. You're still going to have weed. You're still going to have necessarily, yeah, there is advancements in organic farming, but the crop quality is still not up to pace with genetic engineered crops. We want to try to resolve world hunger by providing crops that can be grown in different areas. You can take an organic product, but you're not going to be able to grow it in Africa the same way that you can grow it in the United States because they don't have the same soil content. They don't have the same environment. And what genetically engineered crops is going to allow us to do is to be able to adapt those crops and those animals to be able to survive in those different types of environments to allow us to be able to resolve the problems of world hunger.
You talked a little bit about pesticides. How has the adoption of biotech crops actually influenced pesticide use?
I'm going to say that there is somewhat of concern. Now that with the idea that we do have these biotech crops that are resilient to those pesticides, farmers believe that now they can be able to use those pesticides at a larger quantity without having an effect on the crops. However, what we need to look at is that instead of using more of the pesticide, we should be using less of the pesticide for management purposes. Because you know what? We're still going to suffer from water runoff. The pesticide causing water runoff, ruining water supply and such. What we need to do is we need to practice conservation of our environment. We need to, as we have these really great ideas and really great crops in biotechnology, we need to still be concerned with our environment, and we need to be able to respect that environment and be able to conserve using less pesticides and less herbicides because the crops can be able to withstand those levels of those pesticides and herbicides. But that does not mean that we should be able to